welcome everyone. My name is Ricardo Perez. I use he, him pronouns. I am a coalition organizer with the Alliance, and I also help staff the Blue Line Coalition. And again, welcome to today's event. Our lives are on the line. It is my pleasure to welcome you to what we have going on today. So as you might know, there's an important project that has been re-energized in our area, the Blue Line Extension Project, which is aimed to extend the Blue Line light train from Target Field all the way to Brooklyn Park via North Minneapolis, Robbinsdale, Crystal, Brooklyn Park. So today we're here to give you a community update on this project and on what Blue Line Coalition has been working on to ensure that this project serves and it does not displace community. So what I'll be sharing super quickly right away is just a couple of things, who we are, why are we here, and why our voice matters. So before I continue, I want to let you know about who Blue Line Coalition is. So our current member organizations are ACER, African Career Education and Resource Inc., the Alliance, CAPI USA, Harrison Neighborhood Association, Lao Assistance Center of Minnesota, Metropolitan Interfaith Council on Affordable Housing, or MICA, and then Northside Residents Redevelopment Council, and Twin Cities Innovation Alliance, and Heritage Park Neighborhood Association. So together since 2013, we've been working with this project to ensure that the voices of marginalized communities or communities who are not usually on the planning table have a chance of having their voice heard and ensuring that benefits are directed to our communities through this project, right? So we're here today to, again, provide you these updates on the project and also just let you know that we're currently in a stage where we're about to select a possible new route to address some issues on the previous alignment. So that's why it's so important that everyone's paying attention at what's happening with the Blue Line. And lastly, it is important that communities are aware of not only the benefits that this project can bring to our community, but also of the risks that we could have around us if we don't act right now to protect us from involuntary displacement and other unintended development pressures. So in order for us to be emerged about what Blue Line Coalition is and how we approach these solutions, I wanted to ask Micah and Shella to share some of the history of Blue Line and the work that we have done together through the years. So Shella, would you mind sharing some of the history of BLC?
Greetings all, I'm Shella Sims. I'm an organizer with MICA, Metropolitan Interfaith Council on Affordable Housing. I've been a faith-based organizer for about 20 years. I've been with MICA on staff since 2007. A few things I'd like for you all to take away from this meeting. One is that we are not a new group. We've been in existence since 2013, which means that we are older than 99% members of the Met Council and 99% members of the Hennepin County Commissioners. We have worked diligently through the years from 2013 to 2020 in regards to our interests and our passion regarding the Blue Line extension being continued. There are a few years when the Met Council and the Hennepin County negotiations broke down and stopped, but the Blue Line Coalition continued, and it continues to this day. We are made up of, as Ricardo said, we're made up of individual organizations that have collaborated together in regards to our interests of our community and our organizations around this Blue Line Coalition. And I represent Micah here. You'll find Micah's policy and our statement regarding the Blue Line on our webpage. And if you have any issues or questions regarding me and what I will be presenting, you can contact me at lashella@mica.org. I will be briefly reading from the timeline from 2011 through 2020, just briefly to connect with you all in terms of information. A lot of people, most people don't know that we exist, but we do. We have been working diligently through the years as individual organizations and collaboratively. And here we go. 2013 is when I first became involved with the Blue Line light rail. It's changed through the years. And it was at a meeting at the Urban League, North Minneapolis, with the House of then Representative Bobby Joe Champion, and Ray Dean at that time had not, he was not a legislature. Then we moved to 2013. It's when at that point in 2013, through the Corridors of Opportunity, the Met Council had grants, was giving grants to community organizations from Eden Prairie all the way out to Brooklyn Park in regarding to updating and staffing our organizations. At that point, they seemed to be wanting the organizations to be included in that. And that grant that through the 2 years equaled close to $1 million. So one would think, that they would want and to continue to connect with us through the years. From that, from those grants, each organization did different things with the money they received. And Micah did the PR relationships in terms of actually going to community events with letting people know, trying to inform people of what was coming in regards to the Blue Line coalitions. And at that time, we also brought on staff with us, Candy Bacon from the Heritage Park. We made door knockers, we made buttons, we made several things to give to the public to instill in their minds and to keep in their minds that the Blue Line was coming. In 2013, I started 2011, but in 2013, things started happening as a coalition. Also in 2013, Nexus combined the organizations that had been funded. Remember, organizations had been funded. I think each grant was like $30,000. And so a lot of those organizations continued through the years, which is some of the organizations that now make up the Blue Line Coalition started way back then. So we do have a history, and we have done things. The original cities of the Blue Line Coalition are Minneapolis, Golden Valley, Robbinsdale, Crystal, and Brooklyn Park. Brooklyn Center is also included in that because they would have stations that were key to residents that were totally or highly dependent on transportation. Then in 2013 to 2015, Micah developed a relationship with Jill Henson of Metro Transit. And we, during Juneteenth, we shared a tent in regards to still promoting the Blue Line coming to North Minneapolis and informing people from whomever that was in those Juneteenth celebrations about the Blue Line. And
Shella, I don't want to interrupt you, but I just want to make sure that we're really mindful of time because I know folks only have a certain amount of time. So yeah, just wanted to give you a time check.
But we did, thank you, but we did do Micah did do a Juneteenth survey regarding the Blue Line and collaborated with Met Council in that regard. In 2014, the Blue Line received 2 seats on the Met Council's Corridor Management Committee. And we had support from Gary Cunningham and then Congressman Keith Ellison to support us getting those 2 seats. 2 things that came out of the coalition, that came out of the coalition and working towards the Blue Line was, 1, we helped establish the equitable development principles scorecard in terms of development along the Blue Line. And we also were active in advocating to the Met Council for their now Equitable Advisory Committee. And that was key. It took us 2 years to advocate to the Met Council to do that. Then we'll skip on down to in 2020 is when the Met Council, August of 2020 is when the Met Council all of a sudden announced that we were going in a new direction. And so they have started literally all over regarding their plans and developments, et cetera, et cetera. And that's where we are now. And I would go over to Harrison Neighborhood Association.
Thank you, LaShella. Can everyone hear me? I'm having some internet issues.
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. Because of those internet issues, I'm going to keep my camera off, so apologies for that. My name is Nicole Bueller. I am the Executive Director of the Harrison Neighborhood Association. And so as folks here may be aware, for a long time, the light rail project was planned to go through Harrison. It was supposed to go down Olson Highway. And that was part of the alignment for nearly a decade. And so Harrison residents for nearly a decade were engaged in community engagement and planning around the light rail and anticipated that it would be coming through Harrison. And initially, the light rail coming down Harrison was sold to the community as a way to remedy a past infrastructure injustice, which was the construction and creation of Olson Highway itself. So some folks may or may not be aware of the history of Olson Highway, but it was constructed back in the 1930s, and it demolished 6th Street, which had been at that time, a thriving Black cultural corridor that was often referred to by many folks as the Beale Street of the North. And so with the construction of Olson Highway, it not only demolished and destroyed that thriving cultural corridor, but it also ripped through the near North Side neighborhoods and served to isolate the Harrison community and the Sumner Glenwood community from the rest of the North Side. It's also been an extremely dangerous pedestrian experience for residents in Harrison. And so initially this project was sold to the community as a way to stitch back together the near North Side communities and to remedy a past infrastructure injustice. And so Harrison residents for many years participated in community engagement, work groups and sessions to identify, what kind of potential benefit could this bring to the community. And, there were a lot of promises made to Harrison and near North Side residents. They were told that, in addition to this being an opportunity to address the very real and serious pedestrian safety issues on Olson and to stitch back together these communities, that it would also lead to the creation of a grocery store in the neighborhood. Harrison is a food desert, and that is something that community has been wanting for a very long time. They were also told that this would be an opportunity to get better bus stops and sidewalks that would finally be repaired and connected, that this would be an opportunity to have better transit for folks who are largely transit dependent, that this would connect them to jobs in the region, and that eventually, once the line was constructed, it would lead to more affordable housing units being built. But unfortunately, what we've actually seen since the time that the route was announced was an increase of over 60% in property value increase that is translated into higher property taxes and higher rents. We saw investors swoop in, purchase apartment buildings, slap a coat of paint on them, and use that as a justification to jack up rents by $200 or $300 a month. We've seen housing, affordable housing units being demolished to make way for market rate new projects that are, over twice as much as what most average Harrison residents and Northside residents can afford. And so we've seen the displacement of hundreds of residents. And when we went back to reconvene folks last fall, when we heard news that, there was the potential that this train might be, relocated, we started re-engaging folks. And what we realized was that a lot of the people that had participated in this community engagement in the past were no longer living in the neighborhood, that they had, actively participated in these community engagement sessions. And ultimately, they unknowingly designed their own displacement. And so for Harrison, we've already experienced the detriment of this project. We know that gentrification and displacement, that process kicks off right when you announce the route, that's when you start seeing speculation. That's when you start seeing a rise in property values. That's really when the gentrification starts. And so it's really not, like, okay, we got to worry about this once construction starts. It starts happening long before that. And so Harrison, even though there is no construction, we've experienced the detriment of this project and the unintended consequences in the form of displacement and gentrification. And now we're not going to receive the benefits. And there's been no real public recognition on the part of Hennepin County or the Met Council or the city of Minneapolis to say, hey, there's really been some harm caused by this project already in Harrison and the near North Side. And there's been no concrete commitment made to address that harm. And so what we're asking for is for that harm to be addressed and remedied in Harrison before this route is selected elsewhere, and that also that the rest of the North Side learn and take away, the lessons that unfortunately Harrison has learned through this process, which is that you need to have anti-displacement policies in place upfront and investments made in place upfront before you select a route. And so with that, I will turn it back over to Ricardo. And later on, Kanani from Harrison Neighborhood Association will be discussing some of the concrete demands that Harrison residents have created to address the harm caused in our community.
Thanks, Nicole. And yeah, no, extremely important information. And I actually believe that Kanani is supposed to go next with some of those details. So I'll bring it back to you, Kanani.
Thanks, Ricardo, and thank you, Nicole. My name is Kanani Omar. I'm a housing organizer at Harrison Neighborhood Association, also an active member of the Blue Line Coalition. To shella Nicole's point, this has been a very long project. I have talked to residents who have been engaged for over a decade. They've heard a lot of things and benefits and opportunities that will come with this light rail. And though the project is being shifted and there's a realignment, there is absolutely a fear of abandonment by community members in Harrison about the things they were promised that were going to come with this light rail. We do have a list of demands that Harrison specifically is asking for. A lot of it is tied to some of the infrastructure improvements that were going to come along with the light rail. Some of that includes sidewalks, bikeways, and bus stops that were outlined in the former Penn Avenue and Van White Station area plans, safety improvements on Olson Highway. So residents are no longer killed or injured attempting to cross. We have lost so many natural, affordable housing in Harrison. We have seen so much displacement. So we want to see an actual investment for rentals, as well as down payment assistance to BIPOC and low income Harrison renters. City-owned garden plots have been a huge benefit to the community, and we want them to stay permanent. And strong anti-displacement policies, so the renters who are there now are able to stay in the community. That document was shared and has many more things that were outlined by Harrison documents in the chat. And I will pass it to Denise to talk more about other aspects of this project.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Denise. I am with African Career Education and Resource, Inc., ACER. I'm currently the Director of Economic Development. And I'm going to be speaking about some of the economic opportunities that this line boasts. The project is about $1.5 billion to build it. And with that comes about another $7.9 billion of investment. Municipalities, the city that this line runs across, the covered corridor, have already invested a lot of money into this project, even though the line has yet to be built. And so as we talk about displacement and surrounding housing and people having to move around their housing, there's also that talk about in the ecosystem being able to support, the economic ecosystem being able to support the displacement that has already happened to some of the businesses. And we want to be able to prevent that from happening. When we started on this project, ACER, as a member of the Blue Line Coalition, it was important to us to kind of gain back some of the businesses that we have already lost due to land acquisitions that were taking place along the corridor on the route that had caused us to lose businesses. We were concerned about mitigating that and also bringing back some more of the businesses to the route. We don't want a route that is just focused on the usual suspects, like the chains, the Caribous and the Starbucks. You know, Black communities, we welcome redevelopment. It's the gentrification and displacement that continues to happen around our housing and around our businesses. As we talk about an ecosystem that is, you know, addressing the inequities when it comes to BIPOC businesses, we want to be able to have a line that does not continue to do that, does not continue to gentrify our businesses, to displace our businesses. This route, this current route as it is, it has the most ridership in the state. It has the most home ownership when it comes to BIPOC businesses, BIPOC residents. It has the most ownership for BIPOC businesses, this route. It has the most as far as majority BIPOC population in some of the cities along this route as well. The route may be a majority BIPOC route, but when we look at the investments and the opportunity, they continue to not be favorable to BIPOC communities. And so as we realize what has happened in 2020 in the pandemic and how it brought more and highlighted the inequities that our BIPOC businesses are facing. And when we talk about community wealth building for our BIPOC communities, we want to make sure that moving forward, we can continue to address those issues and those concerns. Wealth building is ever now more important for BIPOC communities to keep up and address some of the gaps that will continue to happen as the landscape and the look of this population, not only just along this corridor, but in this country as a whole. And so as we look at what has already happened to some of the businesses and what could happen, we want to make sure that we continue to be involved in the conversations and be involved in what are those policies that are important to be able to, for us to continue to create wealth in our communities and continue to be able to create generational wealth as well. When you look at some of the study and the statistics, you'll see that low BIPOC, local BIPOC businesses are the economic engine for a lot of these cities. They are the biggest employers for our BIPOC communities when it comes to hiring our local residents. They are the businesses that our communities are used to, are comfortable with, and we want to continue to address how they are benefits. We want to stop highlighting the deficits that are happening in our community, but to start looking at the benefits and the wealth opportunity that we know our community has if we are providing the right policies, putting in the right infrastructure, and being intentional around the opportunities that we are providing. BIPOC businesses, BIPOC communities will be able to thrive. Like I shared before, the folks living along the line is majority Black, and the opportunity, the investment opportunities are going to be huge. You know, it's projected that folks who own housing around LRT, they'll see their profit increase by 44%. You know, the value of their properties increased by 44% just within the first year. And we want our communities to be around to be able to benefit from that. You know, as $7.9 billion of investment looks to come to this line, we want our communities to be a part of that. And so that's why in partnership ACER with the Blue Line Coalition and our members, we're pushing for anti-displacement policies because these kinds of infrastructure and redevelopment continue to be at the history of displacement and gentrification in BIPOC communities. And we welcome redevelopment. We welcome the opportunities about this corridor, this route, the extension, the Blue Line extension is going to bring. We welcome all of that, but we are not here for continuing to have our folks plan and help support something that is going to work against them. We want to continue to champion an economic ecosystem that is involving the development and the creation of wealth for BIPOC communities. And I'm going to hand it over to Kristina from CAPI to talk a little bit more.
Thank you, Denise, for those comments. Hi, everyone. My name is Kristina Doan. I am the Director of Public Policy at CAPI USA, and I'm here today to share with you about our engagement process, what we have encountered, what we've been hearing from those that we have engaged with. So a little bit first about CAPI. We're a nonprofit social services provider in Brooklyn Center, and we provide our core services in 3 programming areas: basic needs, economic empowerment, and civic engagement. CAPI has engaged with immigrant, refugee, and communities of color for several years now around the development of the Blue Line, and we have done it since the inception of the Blue Line Coalition. So we've done this engagement for several years now, and we do it through our primary programming. So through our food shelf, our senior programming, all of our services, we use our trusted relationships with community members to have these conversations about the development of this line. We have also participated in several community events over the last couple of months or so, including several mutual aid distributions in Brooklyn Center during the time after the shooting of Daunte Wright, and helping the community to meet their basic needs while also trying to engage the community members about the development of this line, about the route selection, and the impact that it would potentially and will have on community members. So in that context, it has been not only in the context of a pandemic, but also in the context of lots of community trauma and healing that is happening. We are still out there doing this work, making sure that our communities know about this and have a voice in the process. One thing that we do emphasize and really advocate for is language access. Many of CAPI's clients, participants, have language barriers to just accessing a community survey, accessing forums, accessing Zoom links to know that these events are even happening. So we have a lot of staff on the ground and volunteers who are out there trying to communicate in an effective way to community members in the language that they are most comfortable with. One thing, so I'll share a couple of things that we've been hearing from community members. The first is that in our engagement with Southeast Asian community members who live along the line, they have, in the climate of anti-Asian racism and hate crimes, there is worries about the impact of the line as it comes to their communities. One other thing is that community members have expressed a desire to maintain the same diverse community as it is now, and to make sure that local markets, local cultural centers, and small businesses are around for years to come. And then finally, I want to share a quote from one of our senior participants who said, "We built our homes and communities into the way they are today. They are ours, and we don't want them to be taken away." So with that, we want to say that CAPI is, and our clients are here to stay, our communities are here to stay. The Blue Line Coalition is also here to stay, and we ask as CAPI not to rush a community development process, to include those who might not have language access to seek out the resources that they need to make an informed decision about route selection, station planning, and any other economic development. And with that, I will pass it on to Ricardo.
Thank you, Kristina, and thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. I'm hoping that in these last 30 minutes, all of you have learned a bit more about why our lives are on the line. And I hope that you also learn a bit about the history of the project and where we are now. So I wanted just to, before we open for questions, wanted to share briefly some of what we're calling demands in order to continue to build partnerships with the teams around us who are pushing this project forward, in order for us to support this project and seize the opportunities that have been mentioned during this call. So again, I just want to note the fact that we recognize the efforts from Hennepin County, from Met Council, from Metro Transit, and we appreciate your intentionality in breaking the patterns on this project. And we want you to know that in order to continue to build these partnerships, we want you to continue to recognize and engage community as policymakers, people who have direct life experiences on these systemic issues that disproportionately affect people of color, are very wise to be able to share information that can complete and elevate the work that you're doing when you're creating policies to address these issues. So we want to make sure that you reinstate Blue Line Coalition at the Bottineau Community Works Table in order for us to continue to stay on the loop and be completely aware of your efforts on policymaking. At the same time, we want you to continue to fund us at a level that is meaningful enough for us to make a difference in this project. So by being able to add capacity into our organizations, we can ensure that there's eyes and ears out there and voices to continue to build a justice framework around the execution of the project. And then lastly, the other important thing for us is that, as it was mentioned by Harrison and by others, we want development, but we do not want displacement. So we want to make sure that the process in which we're going through right now, which is moving really, really fast on selecting a new route, matches the speed at which we are adopting and pushing forward protections to ensure that those most vulnerable community members are not displaced as a result of the efforts of bringing this line to fruition. And so we can also ensure that there's intentionality on building wealth amongst the same residents that we have mentioned throughout this phone call. Lastly, as our friend Sin Harrison brought up and brought forward, we want to make sure that you address some of those demands being pushed by Harrison, as their experience on this project showcases the need for this anti-displacement work. So all of this information, as well as the partners, member orgs information and details, will be on our website, and we'll make sure to share that with you on the chat. But those are some of the ideas and the demands that we have moving forward from this moment, which is extremely important in the project. So we did wanted to leave some time for questions at the end. And I know that there have been a couple of questions, but maybe I'll just quiet down and I'll let you ask yourself a question. If you want to raise your hand, and then we can you can ask the question for our panelists. So let's maybe wait a second to see if anyone wants to unmute. Otherwise, I'll move into the questions on the chat. And thank you all for being here.
And just a tech note, to raise your hand, you would go to the bottom of the screen under reactions and you'll see a little button that says raise hand. Or you can just unmute yourself since we're relatively, there we go. Nikki.
Hi, thanks for doing this. I just read an article about what happened in Harrison and it's just unbelievable. Are you guys leaning toward one route or another? You know, like Broadway and I admit I haven't read the document yet, the Word document you posted. But are you leaning toward a particular route, or Lowry? Thank you.
So I will let others, maybe Harrison, to take the lead on answering, but I just wanted to briefly say that, as you can imagine, we're still kind of like, the changes came last year upon the face of a global pandemic, the murder of George Floyd, and many other things. So it was like very chaotic. So our stance from when we learn about these changes is that regardless of the route, that we want to see these policies in place. Because no matter where it goes, if we have these protections, if we have a scorecard that will help direct development projects, if we have tenant protections, then we're safe, then we're good. So I just wanted to maybe illustrate that regardless of the route, we want these protections and this intentionality in place. And maybe I'll just also refer to Kanani or Nicole to perhaps add more information to this question.
Thanks, Ricardo, and thank you, Nikki, for the question. I think I would just echo Ricardo's comments that, you know, we know this is going to be, displacement and gentrification is going to be an issue for communities, whether it's Broadway or Lowry. Ultimately, what we're really concerned about is ensuring that we have the anti-displacement policies in place up front, and that we have the commitment for investment to be made upfront before a route is selected. And I see that Joan Van Holla from Hennepin County has commented in the chat that there will be an anti-displacement work group created. And I would just like to respond to that, you know, it's great that there's this policy table that's being formed, but the timeline of the work of that anti-displacement policy does not match up with route selection. And so if we're really going to listen to and respond to the lessons that we've learned in Harrison, where we know that the gentrification and the displacement starts with route selection, then we need to align that work, the work of putting in place anti-displacement policies and making those investments up front before the route is selected. And so that work really needs to coincide in order for it to be effective, in order for us to not be asking people to once again design their own displacement, and for this project to truly benefit the residents that are currently living in North Minneapolis. And then in terms of Harrison and addressing the harm that has already occurred there, you know, we have our list of demands that Carolyn dropped in the chat, and I'd be happy to talk more about that as well. But I think the timing is really important in terms of when these policies are put in place, when the investments are made, versus trying to select a route and then do those things a year or 18 months after the fact. We know that it's already too late at that point.
Shella Sims here from MICA. One of the things that we are we're concerned about, and now kind of this new route going down Broadway presents a new opportunity for North Minneapolis businesses to be included in the economic development, and also monies that will be available to these businesses in regards to what they have in mind. So I'm glad to see the route. I personally would like to see the route come down Broadway to include these businesses. And you must remember, North Minneapolis is landlocked. So that means we are locked in through different policies, segregated policies through the years. So we don't have a lot of, we don't have any place to expand to. I'm glad to see that now we do have a business advisory committee that's established now. Before 2020, there was no Black businesses going to these business advisory meetings. So that's where I'm coming from. I'm glad to see that our businesses are included and will have the opportunity to state their positions.
Thank you, Shella. That's a great point. Absolutely. And I do wanted to shine light on the chat. There's some activity, as Nicole has mentioned. Thank you, Joan, for sharing information on this RFP process. And then I wanted to highlight some questions by Tekken. How do we start to frame development as restorative? These communities were ruined by ruling class mid last century. We're asking for our communities to be restored. So maybe what I can just say super quickly on that note is that the Blue Line Coalition holds amongst its tools an equitable development scorecard and principles, which helps guide some of these development efforts by centering communities' vision through this tool that helps illustrate what project aligns with community and what projects do not. I think that's a very, initial step into that process, but perhaps I wanted to maybe, Denise, since, with your work with ACER, I know that you're with economic development. What are some of your insights on that question about how do we frame development as restorative?
How do we frame development as restorative? So you want to kind of address the fact that, like Shella said about those landlocked issues. And I will applaud the city of Brooklyn Park, which has 4 stations, and how they wanted to address some of these potential things that they knew would be coming down. They had a whole moratorium happen for a year that kind of restricted development in the city because they wanted to have some rezoning happening. Rezoning that will allow for addressing some of the issues that, BIPOC businesses along the corridor are facing, as far as having access to more affordable commercial spaces. How do we address that before, all these other bigger entities come along? And then actually where those businesses can be placed along the corridors is what zoning really allows and provides, is saying, hey, we want this type of thing to be this place and can be built here. And so by going, taking a year moratorium, not allowing any land to be sold or bought, to address having a whole rezoning done, it allowed the city to be able to address some of those issues that do come up when we talk about gentrification around businesses and being intentional around the type of businesses that we want to come into the corridor too. So, when we talk about some of the available land that is in Minneapolis, when it talks about building housing and who can buy the land from the city and what kind of what kind of housing gets built along the city. Those are some of the things that, community voices can continue to be aligned with to address those things, so that this corridor can really continue to look the way that it looks now, as far as the folks that are living here, working here, and playing here and creating wealth here. These are some of the ways in which community can provide a voice to the conversation and keep those folks to be able to allow them to continue to be here.
LaShella Sims here, along the lines that we're speaking of development. I don't think Minneapolis, especially community folks, realize that with this elections that's coming up, I haven't seen any candidates, running, bring up the Blue Line Coalition in regards to the opportunities that are out there. At this point in time, North Minneapolis has 2 light rail systems coming into its area and community. The Southwest line is coming into North Minneapolis and ending up down at the Target Center station, and the Blue Line extension line. So at this point in time, North Minneapolis is the hottest property in the state. That's why you will find developers, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, they're homing in. And the longer it takes for the Blue Line to come into existence, the more opportunities they have to swoop in like vultures and displace us along. But here again, you have to think about who is allowing them to come in and swoop our community and our people up. A lot of the politicians have something to say about that.
Thank you, LaShella. So we're almost at 1:50. And again, I appreciate all of your time. Do we have any other questions from some of you who are attending this meeting? You can either raise your hand or mute yourself, plug it into the chat, but we do want to make sure to address any questions if you do have any or some. All right, so if we don't have any other questions, again, our contact info or website should be on the chat. And yeah, thank you to all of you, Blue Line partners. So what's next for Blue Line? Yes, excellent question. So, time is of the essence here. This is a project that has 10 years of history and even longer than that, right? So we look into the future and we see another 10 years ahead of us. That's a reality. So our work does not end here, does not end next month. We will continue to be involved with this project. So what we have next in the immediate future is keeping a very strong, vigilant eyes on the RFP process, which Joan is highlighting on the chat, where there's gonna be a third-party facilitator brought in to basically build a work group to end up with anti-displacement recommendations. So this is something that's about to happen within the next couple of months and the next year. So we wanna we're gonna be keeping a close eye on that. We're gonna keep generating content from our partners to community. So you learn about who we are, what we do on the ground, and the solutions that we're pushing forward to these issues that we see are affecting us disproportionately. So that's what I would say.
Yes. Okay, I'm sorry. LaShella Sims here in regards to what's next. I would think what's next for me is to see more of you, the community, involved, because this is it. This is not a game. I mean, it's to the place that displacement means. We all know that the housing shortage is out there. And so people becoming without homes means they're directly headed for homelessness. Seriously. And there is more to this project than just anti-displacement. There, around each station, I think a half a mile, there is money out there for economic growth and development. So think bigger than just anti-displacement. That's key. But also here's an opportunity for North Minneapolis and the corridors along the this line to get in and partake in some of the goodies that come along with light rail transit systems.
Absolutely, 100%. I
I-
think
I would just like to, if I can, just go off of what Shella just said, is that, you know, we know that there was harm created in Harrison because of the false start, and we want that harm addressed. But we also know that the project itself, I mean, it could look very different. It could be a project, you know, the likes of, you know, an infrastructure project like that of, you know, the projects back in the New Deal era of FDR. If we had the political will on the part of community and government to make that a reality, I think that it could be something that would be really beneficial to our communities. And let's be real, you know, we need these anti-displacement policies in place like yesterday because of the economic situation our communities are already facing with the pandemic. And so we need those policies in place. We need, you know, rent control. We need tenant opportunity to purchase. We need to ensure that land that is right now owned by public housing gets developed as public housing and is not sold off to private developers. We need stricter inclusionary zoning requirements that demand that affordable units be built that are actually affordable to the people that live in North Minneapolis. So all of these things, and we need investment. We need economic investment in our businesses. And so all of these things are needed, you know, even without the light rail, but we know that this project carries with it a massive gentrification potential. And so, you know, we can do something really different from what's been done in the past in the Twin Cities. And that's something that's probably never been done really well in this country. And we could see it as that kind of opportunity. But it's going to take a commitment on the part of, you know, those that are in political positions of power to exercise the kind of political will that's needed to get these policies in place, make these investments, and ensure that this is something that benefits our communities and does not displace them.
And you can think of the Blue Line Coalition all these years has been holding a place for you, the community, at the decision-making tables, waiting for you to come to those tables and participate in the decision-making. Now's your time, do it.
100%. I think both of you just described completely what we mean when we say our lives are on the line. And I think that there's nothing more to add after those two. It is real, like everyone said, our lives are on the line. And this is an opportunity for us to put forward a project that breaks patterns that have hurt us and start a new pattern that can benefit us. So I want to appreciate all of your times. Is there any other last questions before we finish today?
Yeah, I would like to ask a question, Mr. Ricardo.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Jerrell.
All right, I just want to know, we've talked about intentionality around anti-displacement and gentrification concerns. Is there any intentionality regarding jobs that are going to be created around this project? Any intentionality in reconciling Black businesses, the businesses that were over there, period? Somebody mentioned 6th Street being a thriving economic area. Is there any reconciliation that is warranted up front in this project?
So I can go first and I can open it up to other partners and knowing we have 4 minutes. But what I would say is that the work of Blue Line is holistic in a way where we want to make sure that from community engagement to, employment, equity is being addressed and equity is being applied. Some of our organizations have done work to do just that, ensure that the number of hires are reflecting of the communities in which the projects will go through. The Alliance worked with the Viking Stadium and we had a good win in ensuring some of those employment numbers. But I mean, I think that again, like when we're thinking about Blue Line Coalition and this project, and that's why I really appreciate the work of all of these partners, that we don't focus on like the engineering aspect of it only, or like the signage of it. We're looking at all of the aspects around the project, and we for sure ask and we'll continue to build demands as the project moves forward to ensure that the money invested in the project goes directly into our communities and not to people outside of our cities or consultants who are not connected to us. So that's just like a personal insight, but anyone from Blue Line Coalition wants to answer or to further on the question about employment and intentionality around that?
Yes, LaShella here. I would say to the young man that the West Broadway Association is part of this project, and they have seats at the table, at the decision-making table. I would connect with them, with that association, to see where their thinking is, where you can incorporate your thinking. They are the ones I would suggest that you connect with, in addition to whatever else other people say or you think.
Thank you.
So I'll just add to that, you know, the building of the line, yes, we've been intentional around the percentage of jobs and who those jobs go to. So to encourage more diversity of hiring of local BIPOC community members. And then also we currently have what we call the Business Resource Collective. And there are really 4 key policies that we're pushing to address businesses, small businesses, BIPOC businesses, really as far as language, and as far as cutting out specific amount of money in the state budget to address those businesses that are currently along this corridor and statewide, to continue to stay in business, to help, you know, continue to take them out of some of the detriment that they faced during COVID, and then also to help them to grow. And again, to remind folks that investing in our BIPOC businesses will also encourage investing in employment in our BIPOC communities and addressing some of the wage gaps as well. So these are some of the different things members of this coalition that are involved in the conversations that we continue to have. And as we, again, to remind folks, anti-displacement is not only just addressing the displacement of people in housing, but also to prevent the displacement of the existing businesses that are along the corridor, and to provide opportunities to bring on more BIPOC businesses along the corridor as well.
I agree. Well said.
Yeah, that's awesome. One thing I just want to throw in there about the language, as far as BIPOC communities, when the person was addressing 6th Street, she specifically was talking about the Black community. And I understand we don't want to remove anybody from the benefits of this, but I want to make sure that the Black community is specifically named as reaping the benefits from this project, because it was a majority Black businesses, Black residents that were affected, even in regards to tearing up the 6th Street, you know. So I understand the whole BIPOC thing, but I want to make sure that we are being intentional, making sure that the Black community is included in this process.
I agree.
And I will share that the exact language that the BRC has presented to the governor in February, it does states Black businesses. And when we talk about minority businesses, we want to name the fact that we're saying Black businesses, brown businesses, and understanding the importance of naming that, and not just throwing everybody under the definition of minority businesses. Because what we realized, and a lot of the data was showed during COVID funding time, that when you put minority and Black in the same category, you end up having where you fund a lot of white women businesses who own 51%. And that in itself right there is a problem. And so when we talk about funding businesses, you have to be intentional in naming exactly what kind of businesses you're funding.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys' work. So thank you for holding this. Thank you for having us. It's much appreciated and needed. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Jerrell, for your questions and for everyone's time. We are at 2:01, which marks the end of our meeting today. This will not be the last time you'll be hearing from us publicly. Keep a close eye on Blue Line Coalition. And thank you so much for your time. Have a great
Peace
rest
and
of this week.
love. Bye-bye.
Peace and love. Peace and love.